Okay, let's jump right into this. Just picture the scene for a second. We are dropping straight into the incredibly high stakes of ancient Egypt, right under the iron-fisted rule of Pharaoh. What we're about to explore today is arguably the ultimate cinematic twist of fate in human history. It's a total masterclass in storytelling, where absolute, unchecked human power goes head-to-head with an unstoppable divine will. So, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking Maulana Maududi's profound commentary on Surah Qassas from his work Tafhim al-Quran. And listen, we aren't just dryly reading history here. We are transforming a classical text into a gripping, totally cinematic epic. We're talking about a story of brutal oppression, desperate exile, and ultimate justice that, honestly, reads exactly like the script of a massive blockbuster movie. Act 1. The Reign of Pharaoh. Our story kicks off with the ultimate antagonist. We're introduced to a ruler who didn't just demand your everyday obedience. The man literally claimed godhood. He intentionally fractured his own society, pitting neighbor against neighbor, all just to maintain this absolute terrifying grip on power. Maududi's commentary brilliantly breaks down Pharaoh's playbook here. His strategy wasn't just brute force, It relied on systematic, calculated division. He elevated his own people, the Copts, giving them all the privilege, while ruthlessly subjugating the Israelites, stripping them of basic human rights and turning them into an entirely enslaved class. This stark contrast right here perfectly sets the stage for our epic. On one side, you have an invincible, sprawling empire, and it's bearing down on a completely defenseless population. And the horror peaks with Pharaoh's darkest decree of all, the systematic slaughter of newborn Israelite boys. The Israelites are entirely trapped, and frankly, they seem to be without a single shred of hope. Act 2. The Infant in the Palace. But just as the tension reaches its absolute breaking point, we get this massive, plot-twisting irony of the divine plan. When things look their absolute darkest, the grand rescue operation doesn't kick off with some massive army, but with a helpless little baby. Driven by terrifying fear for her newborn's life, Moses' mother is divinely inspired to place him in a basket and just cast him into the river. But here's the cinematic twist. That basket is directly intercepted by the very tyrant who ordered the infant's death. Moses is pulled right out of the water by Pharaoh's own household. No way, right? I mean, watch how this sequence plays out. It's literally like a perfectly paced movie montage. He's cast into the river. His brave sister secretly tracks the basket along the riverbank. Inside the palace, the starving infant miraculously refuses every single royal wet nurse they bring him. Then, his sister just casually suggests a woman from town who might be able to help, and boom, he is reunited with his own mother, and Pharaoh is completely unknowingly footing the bill for his upbringing. Maududi really highlights the profound irony here. It shows that no amount of human power, no sprawling surveillance state, and no paranoid tyrannical decrees can ever outmaneuver the silent, unstoppable will of the divine. Pharaoh is literally nursing his own downfall right in his lap, totally oblivious. Act 3. Murder and Exile. Now, we fast forward a few decades. Moses has grown into adulthood within the incredibly privileged walls of the royal palace. But then, a sudden, fatal escalation completely shatters his comfortable life. Moses steps in to defend a helpless Israelite. A single, entirely unintended strike ends up killing the Egyptian oppressor. Total panic sets in. A secret informant rushes from the edge of the city to warn him. The chiefs are actively plotting his execution. Moses has absolutely no choice but to flee immediately, running for his life into the harsh, unforgiving desert with nothing to his name. But right in the middle of this chaos, Maududi points out an essential character beat for our protagonist. Even though the killing was a complete accident, Moses doesn't try to make excuses for himself. He seeks immediate forgiveness from God. It proves that even in moments of profound, terrifying crisis, his moral compass still points true. Act 4. Refuge in Midian. Stripped of his royal titles, his home, and his security, Moses arrives in Midian. He is completely destitute, exhausted, and all alone. But true character always shines in adversity. Resting near a well, he spots two vulnerable women holding back their flocks from a pretty aggressive crowd of male shepherds. Even while he's actively on the run from a global superpower, his unyielding sense of justice compels him to step right in. He waters their flocks for them, asking for absolutely nothing in return. Retreating to the shade, utterly spent, he utters this incredible line, "My Lord, I am in absolute need of whatever good you send down to me." This short, incredibly desperate prayer becomes the major turning point of his entire life. Because he acted with pure justice, this prayer immediately results in an invitation to the women's home, a job offer from their righteous father, and eventually a marriage. Out of nowhere, he finds safety and a totally new beginning.
Parallels of persecution.
Now, let's step back for a second and look at the director's commentary for this epic. Why was this specific story revealed to Prophet Muhammad at that exact moment in history? Like, what was happening off-screen? Well, Maududi brilliantly connects the dots for us. Surah Qassas was revealed right before the early Muslims were forced to flee Mecca to Medina due to severe, violent persecution. So this wasn't just ancient history to them. It was a real-time mirror to their own immediate, terrifying suffering. Look at how stark these parallels are. The persecuted early Muslims could see their own terrifying reality perfectly reflected in Moses' story. The wealthy Meccan elites, they were acting exactly like Pharaoh and his chiefs. The vulnerable Muslims were the Israelites, and the impending, terrifying migration they were facing was a direct, undeniable mirror to Moses' desperate flight to Midian. So, the crucial takeaway here is that this wasn't just some comforting bedtime story. It was a psychological lifeline. It fortified the believers, telling them they were part of a much grander tradition and guaranteeing that their oppressors would fail just as spectacularly as Pharaoh did. It served as a terrifying warning to those abusing their power in Mecca, proving once and for all that physical and military might simply do not guarantee the final victory. As Maududi notes on this final passage, the ultimate cinematic resolution of this text is incredibly profound. True, lasting victory, the kind that echoes through eternity, is reserved exclusively for those who actively reject arrogance, who absolutely refuse to oppress others, and who manage to remain humble despite whatever power they might hold. And that brings us to the very core of Maududi's profound analysis. So as we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a question to ponder. In the grand, sweeping narrative of human history, how often does absolute power completely blind itself to its own inevitable destruction? Thanks so much for joining me on this incredible journey, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.